Welcome, everybody, to the Talk With Kiet podcast, where we connect people, ideas, and capital to help make a difference in the world. Today, I'm on with Bob Ward. And everyone that I talk to, like, when I want to grow up, I want to be Bob. And I've been so blessed to have Bob today to talk about his extensive career entrepreneur journey, his creation and CEO of Quad, a market data on-demand platform, as well as talk about how to grow a fintech business through acquisitions, which he's done recently with an amazing acquisition, which we'll talk about later on as well. Bob, welcome to the podcast.
Excellent. Thank you very much for having me. This is fantastic.
No, it's great to have you. And I think the world would be so blessed, especially inspiring entrepreneurs or people starting the career journey, to really hear your story, right? And typically what we start here is the origin story.
Sure.
So for the benefit of the audience, what is the Bob Ward origin story?
Well, I have to go back to the beginning probably. So let's just say I wasn't the best student on the planet, but I was pretty good at math. So the very beginning of my kind of love came with computers, right? So my grandmother was actually one of the first real early attorneys in Boston. Enrolled me at MIT when I was about 11 years old to work on computers, which were a brand new thing. That's, talking about late 70s or so, early 80s.
Yeah.
So I fell in love with programming. So how it worked, how the mechanics of actually at the time was BASIC was the only language out there. So I started coding when I was probably about 10 years old. Fell in love with it. It was like one thing I could really do well. So that evolved into a love of kind of workflows and how things actually come together, right? If you think about computers and how programmed language is written, there's a flow to everything. So I fell in love with like workflow concepts and how things put together and how do you change things and things of that nature. So when I did my undergrad at Colby College and then I did my master's at Bentley. And from there, I got a very good opportunity to work at State Street Bank. And I got some great tutelage from a guy named Jay Hooley. So Jay Hooley, who went on to be the CEO of DST. So I got to work with him in a sales marketing role that had a kind of a computer programming type of aspect to it around their securities lending program. So I got to learn a lot from Steve in terms of how businesses conduct in terms of sales and marketing. And then I basically fell in love with how could I combine the business side of sales and marketing with systems. And I got a passion for that as I grew up. Luckily, I have a great partner in life. I've been married to my wife for 25 years, and she's probably the smartest person I know. Harvard business grad. She gets a great opportunity to go out to the West Coast to start a company. So I said, let's get out of here. Let's get out of Boston. So we headed out to Manhattan Beach without a one-way ticket to kind of figure out life together. So we evolved that, and I had a great fortune of some folks at State Street introducing me to a firm called SunGard. And SunGard at the time was a company that I had no idea who they did, what they did. So I got involved with SunGard to help them create what they would later call the SunGard Global Network, which I think now is called the FIS Global Network. But basically what we did is a combination of basically my development background and then my sales and marketing thought process was we created kind of the first electronic trading system called Expediter is what it was called at the time. So we named it Expediter, and it connected basically mutual fund trading between insurance companies and transfer agent businesses, leveraging 12B1 fees to do it back in the day. So this is back, you're talking mid-90s or so. That was a very fortunate time in my life because I met some great people. I got to meet, I met Bob Greifeld, who comes up later in the story. I met Jim Ashton. I met a guy named Paul Schneider, who's the CEO of Mid-Atlantic now. Met a lot of great guys. Kevin Rafferty, who I've worked with for a bunch of years, who's a lot of different facets. He's actually over at SS&C. So what we were able to do collectively is we created a very large trading network that started off extremely small, connecting 2 or 3 insurance companies to 2 or 3 mutual fund companies. And that grew into from Expediter to what was called the SunGard Transaction Network, which traded everything from mutual funds. And we caught if everybody remembers back in the day when we used to trade fractions, it went from fractions decimals for equities. So we caught that rein pretty well with some development. And then we did fixed income. We did money markets. So we were able to create basically a trading network inside of SunGard that connected all of the buyers off of all the applications that sat in SunGard's universe. So that business grew extremely rapidly. I think it was probably one of the fastest growing businesses ever in SunGard's history. I was fortunate enough to stay on with SunGard post the LBO, and I got to take those businesses and transplant them into Europe. I brought them into Europe, we brought them into Asia, and we created what ended up becoming the SunGard Global Network, which was a very substantial business. So during that process, I got to learn a lot of great things, managing lots of people, went from having a group of 2 to a group of about 3,500, spanning from one country to 72 countries, learning to manage a P&L, learning to do a whole bunch of really great things. And then luckily, I was in a place where I could really go cut my teeth in the entrepreneurial world. And then I ended up leaving SunGard to create a business called Iris Advisory. So what Iris Advisory did is I helped different companies from scratch figure out, grow like a trading business for futures on oil, right? I created a of all things, which people be like, that's crazy, but I created a management company in the entertainment space where we managed 4 or 5 artists in Los Angeles, right? So we had cover band, we had bands moving all around the country. We had a whole bunch of fun. So I've been in that space. I've been in kind of the development phase a long time. Along that way, I met a fantastic company called InvestNet. So, and a gentleman named Babu Zivandansan. So Babu and I, it's probably one of the most fortunate taxi rides I've ever had. Was we met in Chicago, and he asked if I wanted to do a ride out to O'Hare Airport. And this kind of goes to with, you never know who you're going to meet. So
that's right.
Along your journey. So Babu, which I did not know at the time, was one of the founders of a company called Stamps.com, which had a very big exit. And he was also one of the creators of a firm called InvestNet, which I think people know. Through Babu, I got to meet some fantastic folks like Bob Bernstein and Judd Bergman, Bill Krager, and all these guys, which then I got very fortunate to help them develop their retirement company. So I developed InvestNet's retirement company with these folks, which became part of a company, I think within InvestNet, it's called ERS at this point. So we've been doing all of these types of activities in a lot of different facets. And then again, through prior history of working with all these folks in this space, one of the things that before I left SunGard that we were really interested in is market data. We had a lot of different sites. We were a big consumer of market data. And we thought the wealth management space and market data would have been a great place for SunGard to get involved with as not a buyer of it, but almost a redistributor of a creator of it, that kind of stuff, just do it all the endpoints. I never got my opportunity at SunGard to do that. But lo and behold, I did get my opportunity via New Spring Capital, who at the time, Jim Ashton came back into my life. So Jim, who was the former CEO of North America for SunGard, became a partner over at New Spring. And he had a pretty good idea around, let's create a wealth management market data package, which started with, we acquired a firm called VMS out of Pasadena, California. So what VMS gave us was they had an asset called SIS, which was basically proprietary mutual fund content with some of the largest institutions on the planet. So we used that as our jumping off point. And then what we did is we acquired Quad, which you kind of see behind me on my screen, which gave us options, futures, gave us a ticker plan, gave us everything we needed to kind of fill out 2/3 of the wealth management pie. And then luckily I met you.
That's right. That's when we met. That's right.
That's when we met, because I needed to fill out the pie of, hey, how do I solve what wealth managers, back trust operations, that kind of folks need, which was fixed income. And it was great to meet a like-minded person who said, this is an interesting proposition. Could you change the dynamic of how some of these folks consume market data? So we developed a fantastic partnership at the time with IHS Markit, which obviously has become S&P, to create basically a wealth management package that's a cloud-based system that aggregates all the different data elements along the way that folks need to consume. So it's been a fantastic, fun run from an entrepreneurial standpoint. So now what we have is Quad, which most recently, as you said at the beginning of the broadcast, we did an acquisition very recently of a firm called Exit Night. So again, as you kind of think through your journey in life, so the CEO of Exit Night I've actually known for 25 years because he and I did a deal when he was the product guy at Advent, and I was the COO for SunGuard's wealth business. And so lo and behold, Stefan and I came together 25 years later, and we've taken now Stefan's business, which is market data and aggregation of market data, both proprietary and third party, combined it with Quads, which is the same business. And now we have obviously a significantly larger business, and I think collectively we have about 2,200 clients that consume data from us on a daily basis. So
now, before I dig deep into that, I want to zoom back a bit, and it's interesting because most people I talk to, the last thing they talk about is their spouse and being lucky, but the first thing you talked about is having an amazing spouse through this journey. And it's an entrepreneurship journey, but also any journey when you're trying to build a career and you move to Europe, etc. It's pretty taxing on the family, right? It's pretty
Absolutely.
taxing on the spouse and the partnership. So for the audience, insight to the audience, like what are some of the tips in terms of like how important is that relationship and partnership?
Oh my Lord. I mean, I couldn't have done probably half the stuff I hadn't done without the support system. And I can tell you, it's interesting. So I'll give you a little insight. So my wife and I have been together since we've been 16. So we've been together a very long time. So her grandfather and my grandfather were cops together on the Salem, Massachusetts police force. So we go way back in time. But I think in order to grow, she was a great match for me. She was smarter than me. she had a lot of great attributes, great work ethic, all those great things. So I could actually discuss what I was doing with her and vice versa when she was working, what she was doing. So she understood what it takes actually to start a business, to grow a business, because she's an entrepreneur herself, to how the time demands, the travel, all that stuff. I mean, I used to go on business trips. At some point, I would go for close to 2.5 weeks at a clip going around the world. That's extremely taxing on a family with young kids, right? But having a spouse that understood, the demand it takes to actually grow a business, to succeed, especially in a global economy, was imperative. There's no way I could have pulled it off without her.
Yeah.
So, zero chance. So I think it's one of those decisions in life, and you read every great book, whether it be The Millionaire Next Door or, Entrepreneurialism 2.0, there's actually chapters in there about choosing your significant other, right? It's people at the time, you don't realize how big of a choice that is, but it's a major league choice, and the wrong choice on both sides, is, it can really make for a much tougher life than it needs to be. So
yeah, no, 1,000%. And then just one more backward thought process, and that is you were an executive at SunGuard. Like you are the executive, right? You had a very big job. You had 3,500 people. I'm sure you paid extremely well. To walk away from that and go back to zero, like talk about that mentality.
Scary. I'll give you a funny story. So that the first week after I left, I would wake up in the middle of the night searching for teeth in my bed.
For what?
I had dreams that my teeth were falling out of my head. And my wife would wake me up, she's like, "You okay?" And it's actually a Freudian thing, like it's because it's a massive change. And it's like, did I screw up? Right? Did it not work out the way it should have? It's a scary thing, but I think in my heart of hearts, and I go back to when I was 10, writing wrestling programs at MIT, right? Yeah. I needed to create, right? It was a great run at SunGuard. The higher you get up, there's more administrative things to do. There's things that you have to do versus you want to do. And that's great for some people, how they operate. It wasn't great for me. I like to create things and see how they can grow. I like to change direction on the fly, right? And I like to do a lot of things at the same time. So I like to have my hands on a lot of facets of the business. So at some point when business gets so big, it's really obviously hard to do that and maintain any kind of work-life balance as well along the way. So For me, it was just a time to kind of do it again. So I went, and it probably, I look back at it and, yeah, I think everybody thought I was crazy at the time, probably. And I had two young kids. I had basically a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, or 2 and 4. I mean, they were really young at the time. And to walk away from it was chancy, but I can tell you, it was for me, it was probably the smartest thing I ever did in my life, because it opened up my eyes to not just what my potential was, it was what the potential was of technology, because technology takes such progressive leaps over time. And bigger companies, obviously, there's a lot more things you have to worry about. And as your technology has to play a little bit of a catch-up game along the way. For me, I could start building stuff on brand new tech stacks. I could start leveraging the cloud. You could start doing things that you couldn't do on a dime, right?
That's right.
Like this interview right here, right? This would have to take place at down in New York City somewhere, right? 10 years ago, I think do it this way, right? So it was very scary at the time, but I mean, I think you got to have a little gumption when it comes to doing it and take a chance. So
yeah. Now, through this whole thing, I mean, because right now, to be honest, it sounds like everything's smooth, but I'm sure there's some failure in there. Let's talk about some of that.
Yeah, I would say it looks smooth on the surface. My college football coach said the greatest attribute of what I had was I'm a duck on a pond, right? And I think how most entrepreneurs need to be. You look very, very in charge above the water, and below the water, you are paddling like all get out, right? Your legs are going like a mile a minute. So even today, right? You're putting we're putting 2 pretty sizable companies together. There's a lot of things that go into that, but I think a disciplined approach to how you how you start your day and how you end your day. So, and how I kind of approach everything is I'm a big planning person. I think you have to plan for success. I think you have to plan out your goals. One of the things I teach my kids all the time, it's a great thing I learned along. I think it was Tony Robbins. I got to attend something when Kerry was at Harvard. I think I saw Tony Robbins, but it was, you plan out 12, 36 in 60 months. Right. And this is the 5 things I want to get done. These are the 5 things. And I actually review it every morning. I look at my little sheet of paper, and everything I do is geared towards those goals. And the goals are mixed. Some financial, a lot of it's family, and a lot of it's life. Like what do I want out of my own kind of next year? And then I think your mind works in ways to actually get to where you need to get to on those goals. Even subconsciously, I'm big into that. I think you have to plan for success. So like when we're putting these companies together, like right now we're doing a 90-day plan, and I'm doing a 36-month plan as well, right? What do we got to get in the next 90 days? But more importantly, what do we want to be 24 to 36 months, right? And how do you get there, right? And you get there through a lot of different ways. People, yes. You get there definitely through technology. I'm a big proponent on tech and tech people, right? Because I love technology people are very similar to entrepreneurs, meaning, yes, everybody wants to get paid well, but you want the challenge of waking up in the morning to solve a problem. And you want to be involved with like the latest things, whether it be ChatGPT, whether it be Babu's new company called Jiffy.ai, which I'm involved with a little bit, right? Where it's progressive technology, it's progressive thought that some are going to win, some are going to lose. But for someone like me and a lot of progressive technology people, you want to be in the fight. You want to be in the game. So it's that intellectual curiosity of what's next, right? So I think that's kind of how I kind of go about my process. But I am a big planner. Like I plan everything down to my day, down to my week, down to my month. Like this is where I'm going.
Well, it's like that saying, right? You don't plan to fail, you fail to plan, right?
100%.
And that's right on. I think planning is just around getting more clarity. And there's a saying where if you don't know where you're going, right, no road can take you there, right? From that perspective. So I think that's super
come at you in life, right? Kids, sports, family, parents, work, other things that you don't even anticipate. Without a plan, it's very easy to get off track, right?
That's right.
And you can only control. And the other thing I think I learned this from Chris Condi, who was the CEO of SunGuard, is control what you can control. Don't worry about all the other stuff. There's a whole bunch of other stuff outside everybody's control that, hey, stuff's going to happen. You have to react to it. But if you focus on what you can control, right, things tend to work out pretty well. So,
I mean, there's a there's a saying where 10% of life is what you make of it. 90% of life is how you take it,
I
right?
love that. Yeah.
And that's the thing about what you just said. It's about understanding that there's certain things you can't control in life, there's other things you can't. It's not about things happening to you, it's how you react to it, right?
Correct.
And that's the critical part that I think a lot of people miss out, because in entrepreneurial journey there's a lot of uncertainties,
Oh my
right?
Lord.
And you talk about not having control, like like it doesn't get any worse, right? They're not experienced.
Right. Right. And that's why I think that whole sitting down, spending some quiet time away from screens, right, and actually planning stuff out gives you clarity.
That's right.
Clarity of purpose, clarity of direction, and it gets out a lot of the noise around you where you don't get caught up in a lot of things that you shouldn't waste your time on. So
Yeah. Now, but you raise a good point about technology. We've seen ChatGPT, we've seen advance in technology tremendously in the last 1, 2, 3 decades.
right.
And part of and I may get in trouble for saying this, but for me, I think capital markets, financial markets, institutional financial markets, it's fall into a time trap, a 20, 30-year time trap. We're still running on a lot of these old technology premise, but even old commercial strategies around how to connect data with technology.
Sure. Yeah, I think one of the areas we focused really hard on. So I've been very fortunate. I got to hire a CTO named David Kirk, who has a big background from TradeStation. He's also an entrepreneurial tech person, created his own company, who's been able to present us and educate me on a whole bunch of slew of new technologies that are out there. And that's where a lot of Quad's focus is on, is our tech stack with AWS, and Exonite's tech stack is also with AWS, but creating those and then upgrading them together in a very progressive fashion, which allows us to augment companies that have maybe a little bit of an older technology approach. So we've been able to kind of create an environment off of our interaction with those folks, whether we're the data we consume from people or the data we're pushing out to people, that we can adapt to their environments. So they actually don't have to upgrade their technology to work with us. Because we saw the same issue, right? People have technology that was developed 80s, 90s, 2000s. I get it, right? I mean, you run in a big company. That's part of the process, right? Knowing that, what we did is we looked at technology a little differently. So how can we help them? How can we augment them? How can we put them in a position where they can leverage what we've built and not have to change all their workflows downstream? And that's one of the products we created, was called Universe Plus, which basically took all the data that was centralized that we have, whether it be fixed income and reference data from S&P, right? Whether it be our own proprietary mutual fund content, whether it be Exit Night's new content from their third parties, you name it, and have an ability to push that downstream where people can access that and then also create the extracts off that data to integrate it with their current workflows. So you think about mid to back office employees, whether I'm looking to do corporate actions once a month, or I'm looking to do just mutual fund processing. I want to look up NAVs. I want to do this. There are different use cases within big organizations and different systems. So Universe Plus was created for that mid to back office experience. So based on who you were in that workflow, you were just consuming what you needed in an integrated fashion versus you have to consume everything and then you sort it out, right? We kind of did it the other way around. We kind of gave the, lack of a better term, like I was ordering food last night. One of my kids just got back from prep school, and we were all home and we ordered food on DoorDash, right? And we all got chicken sandwiches, but we got different flavors of chicken sandwiches, different things on our chicken sandwich, but it was the same chicken sandwich, right? So that's the way we looked at the data. It had to be the fact that you could pick what you want, when you need it, whether it be frequency, element, timing, workflow, right? Who are you? And that goes back to that thing I was talking about planning. What we did for almost an entire year is we sat with some of the 5 or 6 biggest trust wealth bank people in the space, and we mapped their workflow in their back office. Literally sat there and said, who does what where? What function happens where? And this goes all the way back to what I was talking about very early, is how my mind works. My mind works on workflow. And then we mapped it all through to this application. So it became a very intuitive approach to how people have to look up information. What do they need when they need it? Because at the individual level, you have an organization and you have a department and you get all that. But at the individual level within those departments, they're going to consume data differently. They're going to consume information differently. So we had to create an application that worked for them, which will work for the department, which will work for the organization, right? So we went not top down, we went bottom up, if that makes sense.
No, it does 1,000%. It's identifying the jobs to be done, right, and provided the flexibility. In a way, it's opposite of what a Bloomberg does for you. I don't want to go there, but I'm just thinking out loud. Like,
I don't think Michael Bloomberg's sweating us quite yet, but we do have a little bit of a different approach to how we're delivering and letting people access that data. Both obviously content and price points, right? So it's just a little bit more of a progressive approach, I would say, at this point.
No, 1,000%, 1,000%. Now let's talk about the theme of this talk as well, which is, not only do you start a startup, but you start a startup with the idea of buying and integrating platforms. Sure. Like, how do you decide who and what to buy, and like how does that dance start? Like, how did you and Stefan start talking? Say, hey, maybe I buy you, you buy me. Like, what goes on behind the scenes?
So it's funny. So how it originally started, research is a big thing, right? Research is all I got to say. If you look at the market data space in the U.S., there are 380 companies that provide content in some fashion to them, from the big guys, ICE, S&P, all to the small guys, right? What I did is I mapped it all. I mapped everything from data sources like content providers to analytics engines to aggregators to you name it. So I have this huge map that maps out pretty much all the players. And then you start sorting down. To me, you get down to, you have bulk up deals, where deals that you just match, right? It's if you put content with content, you're going to get a lot of synergies. You can make your company bigger faster, right? And then you have, I would call them augmenters, like people, when you bring their stuff in, it's a different set of technologies. It's a different avenue. It's sort of going one pin to the left in a bowling alley. You go into the next alley, right? Yeah. So for me, with where we sat in our business cycle, I was looking for a bulk of, like, how do I get bigger faster, right? To get scale, right? Because the minute you get scale, you get leverage, right? You create better profitability for your investors. The whole slew of things that really happen good as you start to obviously get better gross and net revenue. Your margins are increasing. All that stuff really happens at a much rapid pace. With Exit Night, what it came down to was philosophy. And this is weird to say, but when I looked at buying companies, I look at people who have very similar outlooks at life and very similar employees who look at things the way I look at things, which is, technology's king, right? Big investment in technology, want to create flexible data offerings, right? So it's like my first two boxes were checked, right? Big into customer service. I think the one thing, if you learn about Quad, our customer service is off the charts. Exit Night's customer service is off the charts, right? So employees who care about their clients, right? Which is a massive thing for me, right? So once you then tie in together, through the technologies, can you scale the technologies? Yes. Does the deal make sense financially? Yeah, it's got to make sense, right? Yes. But then it comes down to, do you think the companies would work well together? As you take the employees and you put everybody together, do you think people are going to align? And I think that comes down to, what is the direction of that company, right? Are you guys aligned philosophically, how you approach things, right? We have a big mantra in Thai. We end our monthly call every month with the very last thing we talk about. And I kind of put on I'm a Patriots, Bill Belichick fan, but very last thing we end with is, do your job, right? So first, do your job, right? And then our mantra is, if you take care of your clients, right? You take care of it and you help your fellow employees, right? Your own individual personal growth will come, whether it be financial, whether it be opportunity, whether it be, you name it, right? But if you take care of your clients, you're going to grow your revenue. Clients are going to trust you. They're going to give you more business. They're going to be better long-term clients, right? You help your fellow employees out. That just helps the company, right? Everything grows faster, right? Your own personal well-being is going to go skyrocket, right? It's when I think companies get in reverse, where employees just think about themselves first. That's where I think you run into problems long-term, right? Because then you start to develop pockets and you develop lack of communication. And lack of communication in a small company is death. If people aren't communicating at a very high level and being very transparent and very open about, here are the goals. I show all the employees' financials, which people are like, you create. I show everybody. Here's our revenue. Here's our expenses. This is what we're spending money on. This is where we're at. So everybody knows what's going on. So when we do certain things as a company, people aren't like, well, why is Bob doing that? It's like, Bob's doing that because we needed more cash flow, or we wanted to raise margins, or we wanted to have top line growth. So everybody's aligned. So my biggest thing to any entrepreneur out there is communication and transparency is massively important. The minute that breaks down, you break down trust. And the minute trust breaks down, you can pretty much sell your company. It's over.
Yeah.
Once that happens, employees start leaving, because employees don't leave over money. Employees leave over opportunity, company's not growing, and they don't believe in management.
That's right.
So that would be my biggest advice of all, is communication is just absolutely paramount when you're running companies.
And how do you, I guess, how do you decide? Because every stage of your company's growth, like the people you have may not be who you need going forward. Like how do you, right? Like that's a quite balanced equation, especially like for those employees, like they've been loyal to you, but you know what? At this stage, they may not be the right fit.
I mean, honesty, right? Usually, to me, usually what happens at some point, you as an employee know if a company's going a certain direction, you may not be the right fit long term, right? I think having an honest conversation with people is so important to say, this direction we're going, we might need to, upgrade certain individuals, right? We might need to hire in a different direction, which means we have to cut in certain areas. I think as long as you're honest and transparent with people, it's hard. Like getting let go is hard, right? It stinks. It's the worst part of my job. It's by far the worst part of anything I've ever had to do is letting people go. And but I think if you're fair, if you're honest and you're transparent about what's going on, I think most people understand. They might not like it, right?
Yeah.
Liking and understanding are two different things.
That's right.
But unfortunately, you sit in my seat. You have an obligation to the shareholders. You have an obligation to the investors, right? And you have the obligation to the rest of the company, the rest of the employees, to keep growing businesses, right? So unfortunately, you have to make tough decisions sometimes. But I think as long as you're honest, I think things tend to work out okay.
That's quite insightful. And Bob, thank you for being on. Like this says, I'm
Absolutely.
getting pains by people how like amazingly insightful this conversation be.
Oh, that is great.
I've also been asked to invite Babu to the podcast as a guest as well.
Babu is probably one of the smartest people I've ever met in my journey. He's a very, very brilliant entrepreneur. He makes you can't have him right after me because it'll make our interview look bad. But he's outstanding individual. So.
Yeah. So as with tradition, how we end this is, what is your ask from the audience, and what type of people you want to connect with, and how they can help you?
I mean, I think from a business standpoint, I think if you're within companies and you want to take a look at some back office market data tools, you want to take a look at kind of our offerings in terms of how we can help you as a fintech provider. You're a new entrepreneur, you want to get involved. We'd love to have you and love to explain our story to you one-on-one. I think as an entrepreneur out there, again, my network's pretty large. As things go down the path, I'm big into karma, right? Huge into karma. If there's things I think I can help, if things you think I can help you with, feel free to reach out. And if there's things you want to introduce to Quad, if you're a vendor and you have market data that you think is interesting, market data for us to have, we'd love to have that discussion.
Great. Thank you so much, Bob, for being on today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
No, same here. And thank you to the audience for your continued support as always. Next week, I am so blessed to also have Marla Superior, the founder and CEO of Hermesa. Marla and I will talk about her career and entrepreneur journey, as well as how to generate alpha by investing in women. Till next week. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, audience, for your continued support. Have a good one.
Take care.
Bye-bye.